Unless you belong to one of those rare religions which prohibits drinking, alcohol has played a special role in your life. From disgustedly sipping your parents' drinks as a child, to drinking with friends and having enlightening conversations. Between all the different kinds of things we drink in this country is a fascinating story of American innovation, lawlessness, and resurrection. This is the story of our history. This is the story of the cocktail. Pre-cocktail American drinking, like all things American, initially closely imitated British drinking culture. In the archaic age, as it's known, of drinking, namely the early 1800s and earlier, Americans drank warm punches all year long, like their British forebears. That means whiskey, brandy, or gin, warm, in a large bowl, slightly sweetened with sugar. It doesn't sound too good to me, but they really loved it. That was even in the summertime. They would drink these really hot punches. The word cocktail was first used in 1806 in a New York newspaper, and it was defined as any kind of spirituous drink, so any alcohol, whiskey, gin, brandy, with sugar, water, and bitters added. So that was initially what a cocktail was known as. The modern day old-fashioned, it used to just be a whiskey cocktail. So it's just whiskey, sugar, bitters, and ice/water. So if you wanted a cocktail, you would say, like, gin cocktail, and it would be like an old-fashioned, but with gin instead of whiskey. Drinks cooled down when ice started spreading across the country as a business. Friedrich the Ice King Tudor initially marketed ice. It was a failing business because no one knew what to do with the ice. So he started marketing it to people as you can put it in your drinks and enjoy cool drinks in the summer. And this was a new idea. So this really took on. He was just giving it away for free to rich people, and they decided to try it. So that's how our drinks cooled down, and rather than being warm. Jerry Thomas, 50 years later after Friedrich the Ice King, Jerry Thomas, the father of American mixology, the most famous American bartender in history, revolutionized American drinking. He invented the modern cocktail. He made drinks individually rather than communally as a large punch. He added ice, and he started adding fruit as well. So that was known as the Baroque age of cocktails, when they started getting fruit in them, basically. Then comes the classic age of cocktails, which the Manhattan and the Martini. Those are two examples of classic cocktails. These are late 1800s up until Prohibition. These drinks are a little weaker than their former Baroque cocktails, and they usually have vermouth in them, like a Martini and a Manhattan. The golden age of bartending, as it's called, lasted from the 1850s to Prohibition. Unfortunately, American drinking was about to be devastatingly crippled. In 1920, Prohibition began. The best bartenders changed jobs, retired, or left the country. It's a fallacy that cocktails were massively popular during Prohibition. You see in all these movies the flappers drinking cocktails, and that's just not true. The only things they drank were whiskey and ginger highballs and champagne. According to Gary Regan, a famous modern-day bartender, when your drinking experience is an illegal one, you just want to get down to drinking. One example of this, there's in the Museum of the American Cocktail in New Orleans, they have non-alcoholic gin, which was used to flavor the disgusting bathtub gin, which was made legally, very strong, very potent, it tasted awful. So they would flavor it with this old flavor to try and recall what gin used to be like. And as another point that they didn't drink cocktails during Prohibition, the most famous Prohibition cocktail is called the scofflaw, and it was invented by expat bartenders in Paris during Prohibition. So, after Prohibition, the 40s and 50s were actually an interesting time in drinking. Tiki drinks were all the rage. But after that, the skill required to be a bartender greatly declined, and bartenders no longer made homemade ingredients, and they preferred high fructose corn syrup and engineered flavors rather than using the actual source, the actual ingredients. Nobody wanted to drink our grandfather's booze any longer. However, hope lay on the horizon. In the 1990s, sparse interest was regained in recreating these vintage drinks. Humble bars began popping up in New York, San Francisco, and London. There were no cocktail geeks. If you liked classic drinks, the best you could hope to be called is a WASP. Modern day, there's innumerable bars in many cities across the country, almost every city across the country. Massive cocktail conferences with tens of thousands of attendees, blogs, recipe books, and cocktail geeks galore. Here in Pittsburgh, taste and see for yourself at Butter Joint on Craig Street in North Oakland. That's my favorite. Tender Bar in Lawrenceville on Butler Street, and Meat and Potatoes downtown on Penn Avenue. There's also a speakeasy underneath the Omni William Penn, but I haven't been there myself, so I don't know. You can try it and let me know about it. So, here is the history of the American cocktail. We followed its long life from warm British punches to cold American glasses. We've seen what they really drank during Prohibition, and we've seen the decline of American drinking that Prohibition started, and the modern revival of the cocktail. As you can see, the future of cocktails in America has a lot of hope, and as our generation strives for things that are real, natural, and timeless, we will continue to discover the joys of drinking like our ancestors.